Yo, what up? How's it going? And welcome back for another video. In this video, I'll be showing you guys how to play the Reroll Yasuo Lee comp, which at the time of me making this video is super meta, patch 11.15b. So this comp is super meta on this patch, and if you're playing on this patch, you can gain a lot of LP by playing this comp. If you're playing this later and you're watching this video later, I'm sure this comp isn't as crazy as it is right now. But if you're watching this later, this is most likely going to be the comp, the transitions. Maybe some of the tempo timings are not going to be off, but if you're watching this later, I still think you can get a lot of value from that. So let's just get right into it. So let's talk about item prio. Don't look at my items on my carries, on my units right now. These are just examples. We'll talk about them later. So item priority, we're going to go for bow, glove, belt, tier. The reason why we're going to go for bow is because it's not even close. Yasuo's best item is RFC, and Runehands is one of his best damage items as well. We'll talk more about like what you actually need on Yasuo because there is some noob traps here. But bow is going to be best. Glove is my next best option. A lot of glove items are super good on Yasuo and Lee, as well as I like to flex to the Nidalee Riven Dawnbringer build is actually my preferred build to force over this build. So that's also why I go for that, because I'm willing to play either of these builds. And if you want to check out the Nidalee Riven guide, I made one for those. I'll put in a link in the description and comment below, if you're into that sort of thing. All right, and after that, we just have belt and tier. Belt because it's just the best defensive item, just the best like blanket. I'm going to put this on a tank. Has really good win streak items. And then tier is good because it's good in the Dawnbringer build, as well as there's a lot of good items like Hodge, Archangels that are very effective in the Nightbringer build as well. So that's why that's one of our other options. You just don't want to go for like sword and cloak and stuff like that. Cool. Early game, you just want to play around Sentinels, Skirmishers, Legions, and Nightbringers. We'll talk about this comp that I have on screen in just a second, but essentially you just pick up those units. I do have a very psycho forcing play style, which is I buy different units and I play a little bit different than I'm going to talk about in most of this video. But if you want to play how I actually play this comp, I will talk about at the end of the video, but most people don't play how I do. So I will talk about when you're playing more standard. Let's talk about that. But if you are interested in my psycho play style, I'll talk about it at the end of the video. All right, mid game, so level 6. If you roll on level 6, if you're comfortable rolling on level 6, this is the comp. This is the comp you're looking for. There are some pieces you can switch out, but in general, if you don't know what to run, just look for this. If you roll on 6, this is the board. Note you can sub Diana over Vlad or Rakan. She solo wins rounds on stage 3. If I have a Diana, I will check her in for one of these units. If I have an upgraded Rakan 2, then I'll just take out Vlad. Other than that, usually it's not. You just decide what you want. You can get the 4 Nightbringer spike. I do think Sentinel is a little bit better than 4 Nightbringer early on in the game. Also, Rakan is a really good unit. So I usually put Diana over here. But if you really want that spike for the Nightbringer, then you can just play Diana over that. But Diana is really good on stage 3 if you just randomly hit. So you can roll on level 6 or fast 7. I personally almost always roll on level 6. The only times I fast 7 is if I'm high rolling, or if I'm high rolling, I'm playing strongest board, I'm in a really good spot to get the 7 with a lot of gold, or if I'm completely uncontested and I'm playing strongest board that game, that's when I usually go 7. But I most of the time roll on level 6, and I'll give you guys a couple of scenarios on if you rolled on 6 or rolled on 7 when we talk about the level 7 board. So we'll go through those in a bit. So if I'm contested, I usually full send on 3-2 and 3-5. Or 3-5, depending on HP and gold, to assert my dominance and force others to pivot or be weak if contested. At the time of making this video, this comp is very contested. So if I see that I'm contested, I will play like a psycho, which is what I do. I will maximize econ early game, and then I will full send on 3-2 and 3-5 and force the other Yasuo players to put them in a tough spot on if they need to full send or if they need to pivot out. And if those players aren't used to playing like a psycho, like how I do, which most players aren't, until you get to the higher levels of play, a lot of the players are much easier at doing it. If they're not easy to do that, they won't know how to live in that chaos, and they'll just pivot out, or they'll just play a really weak version of your board. They'll die, and you collect their Yasuos and Lees on stage 5. So that's how I like to play, is I do that. But if not contested, you can full send. If you're not contested, you can also full send to win streak on this stage. So this is just another way that I play. I like to win on stage 3 and stage 4 and to up the tempo of the lobby. You can fast 7, but it can be very risky if you're contested. And as I said, this comp is very contested at the moment. But if you're not contested, fast 7 is a little bit easier. But if you're not willing to roll on 6, you're not used to that play style, you can still play this comp, but the situations in which you can force it are going to be much less. It's very hard to force this comp if you're not willing to roll in 6. So just know that. Okay, now let's talk about some items. Don't focus too hard on best in slot. I say this on every single one of my comp videos, basically. There's a few times where a unit absolutely has to have a lot of conditions. So don't focus too hard on best in slot. I will talk about what to focus on here, though. Yasuo, you need an item to give an uptime. I would be lying if I didn't say RFC is isn't his best item. Like RFC is for sure his best item. RFC or Radiant RFC, it is so good. But it's not like you have to have it, and it's unplayable if you don't have it. You just need Yasuo to not die instantly at the beginning of the fight and to have uptime. So you either need RFC, Radiant RFC, or either version of the QSS work really well. Also, Radiant GA is really good, and regular GA is okay. But you should always prefer RFC, and then after that, QSS is okay. If you end up playing full damage Yasuo, and you're not going to be able to get a third utility item to keep him alive, you will just need to play like crazy, because you're only going to win stage 4, and you're going to be pretty useless stage 5 against anybody who has an Ivern or a Volibear or a Rel, which is going to be every player in the lobby except for maybe a Rat player. You will not be able to play the game if you don't have it. So you need to play in a way that you are very strong mid game if you aren't able to get a defensive item. But essentially, you just need one of those defensive items: RFC, GA, QSS. RFC obviously the best. And for damage, Runans is his best item, and then you just add AP or Hodge to that. You don't have to have Runans. I've won plenty of games not having Runans at all, so don't do that. So 95% of the time, if I have bows early and I'm not able to make an RFC, I will hold my bow to wait for an RFC instead of slamming Runans. Even if you get a Radiant RFC later, double RFC plus Radiant RFC gives Yasuo 4 hex range and crazy attack speed. It's good. It's great. You can run double RFC. It's fine. So I will always hold bows for RFC. Unless you're willing to pivot, then you can slam a Runans and you can pivot to like a Draven or something. But if you're just trying to force the build, you always hold the bow. One other thing I will say real quick is Radiant Gunblade is so OP on Yasuo because he will heal on his auto attacks after he ults. So he'll heal himself and a teammate for every single auto attack he does. It's really insane. It's not quite as good on Lee because it's just insane on Yasuo because he has an ult that lasts like the whole fight. Okay, so let's talk about Lee. Some Lee items. You want to have tank, AP, and utility items. You don't really think about Lee items too much unless you end up having to carry him. Archangel is his best. Either version is his best carry item for sure. Other than that, you just put leftover tank items on him. Do whatever. Put win streak items on him. Like if you want to have a stronger early game, like Warmogs and Sunfire, stuff like that. So you just put leftovers. Diana, if you don't end up 3-starring Lee will come out of your comp a lot of times late game, and you can just put Lee items on Diana. Archangel is one of her best carry items, and then she's also good with the tanky utility items like Sunfire and Frozen Heart. So yeah, you just transfer items from Lee to Diana later, and I will show you an example of that at the end of the video. Aphelios, if you end up running Aphelios as one of your carries, which he's a really decent carry even when you're playing 3 stars, a really decent third carry, especially if you get like random AD items later. I, for whatever reason, always get random AD items later, and he can be a really decent second or third carry. And if you end up low rolling, he can be a really decent transition into being your main carry, Yasuo being your second carry. All right, let's talk about a little bit of positioning with this comp, and then we'll get to the mid game where all the juicy stuff is. Positioning with this comp, you want to put Yasuo second row. No matter what item setup you have, you usually want to have him second row. And the idea behind it is you want him to be close enough to get in that ass, you know what I'm saying? But you don't want him to take first aggro. And it's usually good to put your tankiest member in front of your Yasuo. So that's why I have Aurelia here on positioning. And you just want Lee Sin the dead center of the map because he just gets crazy value from being in the center from his ultimate. But that's really the only positioning stuff there. All right, let's talk about some level 7 stuff. This is when it starts to get a little bit more interesting. So let's get over to this. All right, this is an example of a level 7 comp, but just note that the build is really flexible. Play what you hit, but I like to run Jax and Rel by default. Just Jax and Rel are insane units. They're really good mid game. I mean, Rel's good the whole game, and then Jax is a really good mid game. And I just much prefer it over Sentinel. At this stage of the game, Sentinel starts to drop in value. It can be really good, but it's still fine. But I just prefer having Iron Chad. It's a really nice spike mid game, and a lot of people won't have their last Whispers slammed. I mean, sometimes they will, but You can actually get a lot of wins just from having Iron Chad, and then the fat shield that Rel will give you, because she's really insane on stage 3, stage 4. So if I hit a Rel, I try to find a way to fit her into my comp, and this is the easiest way to fit her in. And then you just add a Diana. So you basically take out Olaf or Khan, exchange it for these, and you add Diana for 4 Nightbringer, very similar to the Dawnbringer build that I showed you guys yesterday. Cool. You usually don't run 6 Nightbringer, even if you hit, unless you have a 2-star Aphelios on your bench. Like you hit a 2-star Aphelios, because Aphelios with no items, mid-game, 6 Nightbringer, actually will do a lot. Because basically Lee is going to chunk people on the front line. Yasuo is hopefully going to finish them off, but he might not. So Yasuo is going to chunk people, Lee Sin's going to chunk people, Diana's going to chunk their backline, and then by the time Aphelios ults, at like 15 seconds into the fight, there's probably a lot of low HP members, and he finishes them off. That has been my experience. If I hit a 2-star Aphelios, I try to find a way to run 6 Nightbringer, but usually you don't run 6 Nightbringer mid-game unless you hit Aphelios 2, or you already have your 3-star Lee or Yasuo. You get huge spike on 6 Nightbringer. But other than that, you usually just run strong units over 6 Nightbringer, because you don't want to run Vlad and like an Aphelios 1. They don't really do anything. Okay, econ and rolling. So I'm gonna lay out a couple scenarios for you guys here. And if you've noticed, I've just been switching the items on here just to express that like you don't have to have the items you think you need to have. Cool, but econ and rolling. So if you did roll on level 6 and stage 3 and you spiked really hard and you start winning, you're one of the stronger players in the lobby, you should plan on slow rolling on level 7, unless someone else is also playing like a psycho contesting you, and it looks like you're gonna die before them, then you can play like a psycho too. But most of the time, if you win stage 3, you just plan on slow rolling on stage 7, and just try to get your 3 stars by the time you get to stage 5 and level 8. If you fast 7 and are in a good spot, HP and econ wise, like you have like 80 health or something like that, and you aren't contested, then you can just AFK slow roll until you hit. But just know that if you don't hit 3 stars by 5-1, you may want to full send on 5-1, because 2-star Yasuo level 7 is not able to compete with late game boards unless you are transitioning to a very different comp, which I'll talk about later. But we're playing for 3 stars if you're slow rolling. So if you haven't hit by then, you probably want to just full send a hit, because you will just take 20 stage 5 and beyond if you don't have a stronger board. Okay, if you fast 7 and you aren't in a good spot or you're contested, you may want to full send a spike. It will be much more difficult to hit 3 stars at this point in the game, which is why I like to play a playstyle where I play much more aggressive on stage 3. It's much more consistent for top 4ing, at least for me personally. But if you're in a really bad spot here, it might just be a play for 4th place through 6th place angle. And what that really means is you can do a couple things. You can you need to full send to spike your board. And your only outs are, maybe you hit a lot of Yasuos or a lot of Lees. Maybe you're like really close to Lee. Then you just econ up on stage 4, and then you full send again to hit the 3 stars on before stage 5 happens, right? That is an out. But your other out is to pivot to a triple carry comp with Aphelios, Yasuo, Diana as your carries. And I'll show you guys an example of when the game's going wrong and you have to do that at the end of the video. So we'll show you guys that. All right, so this is your level 7 board. But again, remember, you can run 6 Nightbringers. All right, let's move on. This is going to be the default level 8 board. This is if you are hitting, you get 3-star Lee, you get 3-star Yasuo, you're playing around both of them. You have great items for them. This is an example. And look, I have suboptimal items in my Yasuo. This still works fine. It's not going to be as good as some of the other setups I showed you, but point is, this will be fine. I have a Radiant on my Lee. It's all good. Cool. So it's actually super flexible. I'm showing you guys a default version, and I'll show you guys a flex version in a second, but you just want to play around emblems, Iron Chads, HIV, Fiddle Gwen, just what you need and what you're hitting. Just what you need based on lobby and what you're hitting. But by default, I just play 6 Nightbringer and flex out later if I need to win the lobby. So if I have these 3 stars, by default, I'll just play this. And then once there's like 2 players left in the lobby, their magic damage, cool. I'll swap out some units for like Fiddle Gwen, and maybe I'm able to go to level 9. I'll do like Fiddle Gwen, Lux or something, right? Cool. So just be willing to flex out later. But if you don't know what to do, slot in 6 Nightbringers plus a Rel and Aurelia, and you'll be fine if you have 3 stars. If you aren't flexing, oh no, I just said that. Okay. I like running Aurelia over Riven just in general. You can run Riven in this spot. I haven't really talked about this, but I just like running her because she gives you a lot better emblem options, because she is a Sentinel, she's a Skirmisher, and she's a Legionnaire. So she gives you a lot more outs than Riven does, and she's just a better frontliner in general. She's better without items than Riven is. So that is just why I do that. All right, here's an example of the game's going poorly, meaning I didn't 3-star anything, and I'm having to pivot. Okay, this is just an example of me playing around emblems and playing based off of what I hit. This isn't like necessarily the comp you're looking for, but essentially what we did here is we didn't 3-star anything, so we dropped Lee, and we put the Lee items on Diana. You know, we had an Archangel on him, and then maybe we hit a Frozen Heart for our Diana later. Maybe we hit a lot of AD items early, and we can transition them to our Aphelios, or, you know, maybe we had that situation. But personally, when I've played this, just from my anecdotal experience, I have not had any difficulties finding AD items late game. You don't have to find the perfect ones like Deathblade, stuff like that, but I have not. I'm just putting random items on him. This is not best in slot or anything, but like I have just not had a hard time finding some AD items for Aphelios late game. So that has just been my experience. But this is if the game is going poorly. You just flex around your emblem. So like I hit a Skirmisher emblem and I have an Auction, so I'm gonna run this Skirmisher core with a Rel, and I have Iron Chads. You know, it could be anything. Maybe I hit a Revenant emblem, and I'm gonna play around Volibear Ivern as my front line. You know, just play around what you hit. But essentially, you can't rely on Yasuo to solo carry. Even if you built a full comp around him, you cannot rely on him to solo carry in a situation where you don't have him 3-starred. So you want to try to make that situation where you have a really solid front line with like Rel, Jax, Cavalier, and Aurelia. So you have a solid front line. Your Yasuo maybe will kill the frontliner solo by himself, but he'll chunk him down. Diana, you're going to have to sweat the positioning. Diana gets in a good spot, chunks him down. Akshan will shred armor and chunk him down. And then like the whole point of the comp is Aphelios is actually your real carry. You're just trying to chunk people down low so Aphelios can finish with his first ult. And then hopefully he killed like 4 units and he can just ramp up and finish the fight by himself. It is the whole idea with the comp. But again, that is if you are struggling and you're having a hard game. But if you're not having a hard game, just default to 6 Nightbringers if you have a 3-stars, and then you can pivot out to something like this if it makes sense for the lobby. That's just the idea. All right, now I'm going to talk about my Psycho playstyle. Let me just tell you what I do most games when I want to play around these 3-cost carry comps, which has been my playstyle beginning of the set. Just found it's easy to play this way. So here's the playstyle. I only buy Aurelia, Olaf, and then Aurelia, Olaf, and then I might throw in a random Skirmisher. And then just whatever I hit, I pre-level every game. I pre-level to 4 and I pre-level to 5. And I just take whatever units I'm hitting. So if I hit a Yasuo Lee, I try to commit to those comps unless I see a lot of people contesting me. If I hit a Riven or a Nidalee, I will just only hold those units. And basically what I do is I'll play strongest board if I can. I don't care about streaking that much. I just care about making econ. You can make strongest board and you can win streak. Or you can make strongest board and go win, loss, win, loss. But the key thing is in the playstyle is if I can make econ, I will sell any unit that is not going into my level 6 or level 7 board. No matter what. I'll sell a 2-star Udyr that is carrying my comp if it makes me 10 gold. Because I am not playing Udyr, I'm playing Yasuo. And essentially the playstyle is forcing. I'm essentially forcing around whatever my early game 3 costs I hit and just playing around that. And my whole idea with that playstyle is I just spike really hard stage 3 and stage 4, and I just create chaos and force the whole lobby to play at my speed, which if I do that most games, and I'm in a good spot to do that, which most games I am, everyone is having to play at my speed, which is my comfort zone. So it puts me at an advantage, and I find it's really consistent for top 4ing, which is why I do that playstyle. But anyways, guys, wow, I keep hitting the mic. That is going to be it. I hope you guys learned a lot from this. That is my goal. I don't just make this to try to get some ad revenue and some exposure, which, you know, I mean, it's a very big contributing factor. You know, I want to grow a channel, but I really hope that you guys actually learn from this and gain LP. So make sure to let me know if you do, or if you just made it to this point in the video. It's always interesting to see how many people actually watch all the way through the end and to the outro. It makes me, honestly, you know, not to inflate my ego, but it makes me feel really good to know that somebody spent 20 minutes listening to me talk. It's kind of insane. And I just appreciate anybody who did that and support me and all the videos and stuff. So just know I appreciate you guys. You don't go unnoticed, all you guys who comment and make it to the end of the video. It gives me the motivation to keep making this stuff and making this stuff for you guys so that you guys can climb and do better and get better at the game, if that's your goal. Anyways, I'm going to stop talking. Appreciate all of you guys. Hope you're all doing well, wherever you're doing, whatever you're doing in your life. Hope you're all doing well. And yeah, I'll see you later. Bye, guys.